10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 199. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 199 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. That's right, we are almost at 200 episodes. Very, very excited about this. And thank you to all of you for tuning in and week out and helping us get to 200 episodes. This is going to be quite a milestone. That means that we've been doing this for just about 4 years, which is pretty awesome. That you guys are engaged enough with this material to keep on listening, and the podcast has kept growing. It's just a wonderful thing. So just a quick reminder, if you want to get the PDF to this episode, which I think you're definitely going to want to have, as this is going to be our Tune of the Month episode, and we're going to be wrapping up our series on melodic fragments. So if you want to grab this etude in all keys, make sure you go over to our Patreon site. It only costs you $3 a month to get access to this PDF and 199 others. We've also, just this week, put out our first ear training podcast. So if you haven't listened to the preview episode for that, make sure you go and check that out. I think that's going to make that subscription so much more valuable. And again, the price stays the same. It's only $3 a month. So go over to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, and get yourself signed up today to become a member. Again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, $3 a month. Got to give a quick shout out to everybody who has signed up this week. Thank you to Danny, Patrick, David, Tom, Rich, Simone, and Martin. Thank you guys so much for getting signed up, pledging your support to the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson. We're up around 275 members over there, and our goal is to get to 500 in 2020. So if you want to be one of those people, go get yourself signed up today. All right, let's jump into the episode. So as you all know, this month we've been talking about our series on melodic fragments. We've done our 3-note melodic fragments, we've done our 5-note melodic fragments, and now it's time to kind of sum it all up into an etude. And the tune that I chose for this month is the great composition 4 by Miles Davis. I think that this really lends itself well to these melodic fragments, contains a lot of 2-5-1 material, and it cycles through quite a few different keys. It has fast-moving chord changes as well as slow-moving chord changes. So it's just kind of perfect to sum up the material that we've been talking about all throughout the month of February here. So just a quick little recap on what we've been talking about. We started out with our 3-note melodic fragments, and we were connecting 3 and 5 and 5 and 7, and then 7 to 9 with our 3-note fragments going up and down. And then we segued that into connecting 2 chord tones together by using a 5-note melodic fragment. So 3 all the way up to 7, and then we did 5 all the way up to 9. And those were kind of completely different sounds, right? And depending on where we are in the chord, which 2 chord tones we are trying to connect together, we get completely different sounds. And this is a great bridge to go from just pure chord tone soloing to starting to become a little bit more melodic and connecting our vertical and horizontal playing. That's kind of the whole goal with these melodic fragments. So I know a lot of you have gotten a lot of feedback that you found these episodes to be very useful. So what I would like you to do with the etude this week is I'd like you to go through and analyze where I'm using these melodic fragments, if they're 3-note, if they're 5-note. If you remember last week, we talked about mixing them up, right? So not always going right in order, right up or down, but using the same 5-note fragment and introducing some new intervals in there that aren't just seconds, whether they're major or minor seconds. There's so much we can do with a 5-note pattern, and we can put it through a lot of permutations. So I'm going to go through the first couple of measures of the etude, so make sure you have your PDF in front of you, and we're going to talk about a few of the things that I'm doing, and then I would like you to go through the rest of the etude, play it first, and then start to analyze it, try to figure out what I'm doing. That's where you're going to get the most benefit out of this. So if you look in measure 1 of the etude, I'm using a 3 to 5 melodic fragment right at the beginning. And then I'm using a 7 to 9 melodic fragment right after that. Then I'm coming down all the way from the 7th all the way back down to the root. So that's even a longer fragment. That's a 7-note fragment. I'm using basically the entire scale. But you could also look at it as 2 fragments. Then we go into the first 2-5-1, and I'm using 3 to 5 in measure 3. And then I'm using a 5-note fragment in measure 4. I'm going from 3 all the way up to 7, and then kind of skipping down a little bit. And that's what I try to do in these etudes, is combine the devices that we're talking about in the previous episodes with some other things as well, so that you get kind of an idea of how to use this stuff in context without just using one single device. So then if you look at measure 5, I'm going from 3 all the way up to 7 and all the way back down. So there's another 5-note fragment, 3 to 7. And then in measure 7, I'm using 5 all the way up to 9. So another 5-note fragment. And then in measure 8, I'm doing exactly what we talked about last episode, and I'm taking this melodic fragment that goes from 7 up to 3, which we didn't even really talk about, but I think at this point you should know that kind of anything that connects chord tones is a possibility. And I'm mixing that one up. I go from the 3 down to the 7, back up to the 9th, and then to the root. So that's a good example of where I'm using a different intervallic structure than just going straight up or down between the 2 chord tones. So I want you to go through the other, 24 bars of the tune and try to figure out what I'm doing. Look at it in context, look at the chord that's happening at the moment, and figure out what the fragmentation that I'm using is. Now, again, you might come across some spots where I'm actually not using a fragment. I'm using something else, some other device. But I can guarantee you that there are a ton of those melodic fragments in there. All right, so enough of me talking. Let's check out what the etude sounds like. So you can hear there's a lot going on in that etude, and I think this is one of my favorite etudes that I've ever written for you guys. I just love the sound of particularly those 3-note fragments. There's just so much you can do with it. And I decided to do 4 for you guys because the melody actually starts with a 3-note fragment, 5 to 7. And then it kind of follows that pattern all the way through. So it seemed like an appropriate tune to kind of write this particular etude over, and I hope you find it beneficial. So we've got that etude in concert, bass clef, B flat, and E flat. So when you sign up for Patreon, you get all of those. No matter what instrument you play, you're going to be getting something that you're going to be able to use. We're also going to include a play along at a couple of different tempos for you. I know that tempo that I just played out was pretty fast. we'll include a slower one so that you can work your way up to that. But that's all available to you. All right, everybody. Hopefully that was beneficial. If you've got any questions for me about this etude, about anything that we talked about this month, the best place to drop those questions is in the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. If you're not a member, we've had so many people start posting over there, doing our transcription of the month and just a whole bunch of really cool stuff over there. Really grateful for everybody who decides to post over there. All right, that's going to about wrap it up for this week. See you next week with a brand new episode. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. I'm going to play the etude one more time at the end, do a little bit of improvising, trying to utilize some of those 3 and 5 note fragments. Have a good one, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.